Mr. Vanderbrink one more time for another presentation on the Middle Ages. This is going to be put into Edmodo, so hopefully you're checking Edmodo frequently. Hopefully you're participating in Edmodo. I'm going to be trying to put posts, different pictures, questions, topics, whatever in Edmodo at least once, maybe sometimes twice a day. And I'm really, really hoping you guys are going to participate. You're going to get involved. You're going to say stuff, share your opinion, share your thoughts, comment on other people's comments, stuff like that. I really would like to see some more active participation. Right now, we have, I would say, about 70 to 75% of the students completing all the assignments in Modo, which is fantastic, uh, or at least not bad. But a lot of those people, most of those people, are not saying a thing in Modo. They're not communicating. They're doing their work, but they're not participating, right? They're not getting involved. So I'm really, really hoping that more and more of you will get involved, so I don't have to harass you and your parents. And that way, it will also hopefully be good for your social life because some of you might be getting lonely and bored watching Netflix all day, and maybe interacting with myself and other students around interesting, important educational topics will be of some value. Anyway, so back to the Middle Ages. This is a Middle Ages part two. Hopefully, you've already done the part one assignment. As we can see here, evidence of dragons. So, if you were ever wondering if there was dragons back then, this picture proves that there is. LOL. So let's move on. Believe it or not, I already made this video, and I dragged it on for 15 minutes, and I'm like, oh my god, I need to make these videos shorter. That's why I'm talking so fast right now. So I'm going to try to make this video under 10 minutes because I don't want to make another 15-minute video. So I better hurry up and get to it. The first topic we're going to talk about is the Magna Carta. In the early 1200s, English nobles, those are the rich people, the aristocracy, they accused the king, in this case King John I, of breaking the feudal agreement that he had made with them. The angry nobles presented him a document called the Magna Carta, which was Latin for Great Charter. The Magna Carta listed 63 important demands. In 1215, the king relented. Means he finally gave up and gave in and agreed to all of these demands. The purpose of the Magna Carta was to limit the power of the kings. They didn't want kings having unlimited power. Okay, just like you don't want people like Donald Trump to be absolutely in total control of the government because that's kind of scary, right? You want checks and balances. You want other people to have some say as well. So you don't want your king to have 100% total power. What was all in the Magna Carta? Well, like I said earlier, there was like 63 things, but here are some of the more important ones. The king would have to get consent from nobles, barons, those were the rich people, before raising taxes. The king could not just take away people's land. Okay, this was very important to nobles and the rich people because their land was very, very important to them. That's why they were rich. They didn't have all the companies, the corporations, the stocks, and everything they have today that the rich people own. Back then, it was mostly just land, and of course, the beautiful castles and buildings and structures on the land, which a king could just take away back then. The king could not imprison people without a fair trial. The king would not delay justice for someone accused, so you don't want to be sitting in jail for years and years and years just to be found not guilty, and then you're like, oh crap, how do I get all those years back? And all free citizens could own land. And last on this sheet here, or this slide, the church would be independent of the king and the crown. So they didn't want the king having total control and authority over the church. They wanted a separation of church and state, which is an important part of the Magna Carta. The next topic we're going to talk about quickly, and I'm going to try to go through this quickly because the last time, once again, I spent 50 minutes talking about this. Castles are one of the first things that people think about when they picture the Middle Ages. Castles were not just homes for kings and queens and the rich and the powerful. The castles were also built for defense. The area of the castle where the king or the queen lived, and it should say lived there, was known as the keep. And the great hall would be where the king or the queen or lord and his family and guests ate. So there would usually, most castles had a great hall, lots of tables. It was like lots of parties on the weekends, things like that. Lots of times for celebration. Uh, all right, so here's a quick picture of a castle. Okay, the moat was an important part because uh, up until the time people started building moats around their castles, uh, people who attack these castles, they got pretty smart, and they started having these big giant siege towers, which would roll right up to the castle, and then people would jump out of the siege tower, climb right onto the walls, and climb right over the walls and attack the castle. So they started building moats like this around the castle to prevent people from getting right to the door, and of course getting right to the castle walls. Uh, Eventually, over time, the people attacking the castles, soldiers, whatever, learned how they could divert the water and fill in with soil or land, things like that. But of course, here you have your drawbridge. Okay, there's your keep where the royal family would live. You have a chapel, the church. Okay, soldiers, servants, slaves, people who work for the king, after the horses, for example, they would all have their homes somewhere in here. And this is just one out of a thousand examples of what a castle might have looked like back then. Here's another one. Okay, once again, you have your drawbridge, your moat around the castle, so it becomes more difficult to attack, but definitely not impossible because a lot of castles were eventually attacked and defeated by opposing armies. Here's an idea of the things. Sometimes they were multi levels high, and you get an idea. The royal family might be up here. They might have the great hall here. Maybe the servants work down here, and then et cetera, et cetera. Where would the soldiers sleep? Maybe over here, here, whatever. Uh, and this is what a castle would look like if you went to Europe right now. Once again, there is still thousands of castles. I've seen many of them. No, I've been to England, but I've never seen a castle in England, just because that's not where I went. But when I went to travel around Europe to Germany and Holland and France, I saw a lot of castles in those areas and had a few tours of some of them. They're absolutely gorgeous. Um, Here's something, that you see from Game of Thrones or something like that. Huge castle. You can imagine how many people could live in a castle like that. And how to attack a castle. So, starting to get worried about the time here. Attackers use elaborate weaponry and tactics to lay siege to castles, siege towers, and giant catapults. Were often built. Catapults, of course, flung giant stones or balls of fire or things like that. Moats were diverted by digging trenches or filling them with dirt. Tunnels were dug under the walls to weaken the walls. Of course, it was more difficult to do that if there was a moat. The arrival of gunpowder in the 1300s allowed giant cannons to destroy castle walls. So, really, what happened when you had cannons is that castles were no longer as effective. Battering rams, and here's a giant siege tower, kind of one example. There was hundreds of different types, but these look like Viking ships here attacking a castle. And they would climb up here, and then they would climb onto the walls from some sort of door or drawbridge that opened up here. The problem with these siege towers is they were usually built out of wood. What else would they be built out of? And they could easily be lit on fire. So once, Britain, for example, when the Vikings were attacking them, they got a little smarter and like, if we shoot oil uh, and gasoline or whatever they had all over here and then shot it with a fiery arrow, we could light these things on fire. And here's a picture, they wouldn't last very long. And the soldiers inside wouldn't last very long either. Here's just another quick picture of a siege or an attack on a castle and what it might have looked like back then. Okay, here's soldiers battering down the doors of battering rams, protected from flaming arrows and things like that. These soldiers are protected as well. Um, and here you have your catapults, big ones, small ones. Here's more down here. Uh, so it kind of gives you, here's your siege tower. Kind of gives you a pretty good depiction of what attacking a castle. So hopefully, let's see how long did this take. Hopefully this was under 10 minutes this time, or at least under, oh, look at that. Perfect. Definitely better than 15 minutes. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.